Assume you're gonna go to. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Here we are for another live stream, and we have a very special guest today. I've been looking forward to interviewing Peter Buss, our executive bishop, somebody I work with very closely for a very long time now. And so I'm very excited to welcome him. And I'm just going to bring him right in, and he can say a little bit about himself. So, welcome, Pete. Give me a moment to just get you into the screen. There we go. Hi, Pete. I'm glad you're here.
Hello, David. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Hello to everyone out there.
So just start off, introduce yourself to us, because people think of you as a bishop, and they think of you maybe as the pastor of Glenview and showed up and have been in this really busy job. But I don't know how well everybody knows you. So just give us a little bit of color about you.
Happy to. So when I'm asked to describe myself, I usually go into relationships. So I am married 34 years to a wonderful woman. I have 4 grown children, 2 grandchildren and counting. And I count those people as major blessings in my life. I've been a pastor for 33 years. And I've been serving in this particular role of executive bishop for now my 7th year, together with Dave and another colleague in the bishop's office, Brad Heinrichs. And we're having a lot of fun trying to figure out what's going to serve this church that we love and the academy across the street. And been doing a lot of reflecting on that. But hopefully it brings forward a lot of some of the pastoral energy and some of the things that I'm most passionate about, which is sort of helping people find direction and purpose in life, sort of accumulation of my own journey as a pastor in the Chicago area, and maybe even springing back to my roots in South Africa and some of the things that I saw there, my heritage, travels around the world, and just a deep desire to help people with the truths of the new church to have a better, more prosperous life. So, that's a little bit about me.
It says a lot. It speaks volumes, if I were to say so. But anyhow, we are here specifically to dial in on conversation around vision. And I want to introduce that just by saying we have been seriously ruminating on the vision for the new church and what we would like to see happen specifically with the general church. And we've been looking at that pretty seriously now for the last 11 months. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about what got us into that conversation to begin with, and how has that unfolded?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So any organization has a history, a heritage. I like to sort of think about it as chapters in a book of life. The book of life is a biblical reference, and each of us have one of those things. We've all got a past, we've all got a future, and through all of our different choices, through all the different experiences that happen to us and our reactions to them, that book is being written. In a church kind of frame, with the general church as our vehicle, our spiritual family, we have this idea of wanting to have a conversation about the chapter of our book of life that can be written with a new church lens, with an intentionality of leaning into the Lord and his teachings, and trying to have that be a way of aligning our choices such that that next chapter is full of promise and happiness. So when you look at that from a leadership perspective, when you think about all the relationships and the people, the web of people who turn here for sort of a spiritual anchor point or a touchstone, you get to think about, well, what's going to help? What's going to have this whole church have a vibrant next chapter of its existence? And that's a little bit more of a leadership construct that we get to put forward, a shared conversation about what we might do together with the strengths of this organization, with all the people in it, to have a shared understanding of what we're trying to do together so that the Lord might be able to bless that chapter with vibrancy. So that's what we're talking about. And at the point in our tenure as leaders of the church, it just felt like time to have that shared conversation and see what we could do together.
So, if I may, and I give myself permission to try to challenge you, Pete. So we'll see how you handle some of these questions. Challenge you in a gentle way, okay? But one of my, which I think is a challenging question, is if you think about yourself and your own personal faith journey, is there anything in that faith journey that comes to mind that has significantly shaped your perspective about what you would hope and dream for with the future of the general church?
Ooh, that's a great question. Sure, there's some things that come to mind almost immediately. I don't know about other people, but something about some of the biblical numbers that come up in scripture are a meaningful sort of stepping stone through life that most of us go through. So I find that people such as myself or others are going through some what am I supposed to be doing in life moments at, say, age 30 when Jesus started his ministry, or at age 40 when there's sort of that midlife kind of a lot of life under our belt, but then what's the next chapter really all about? And I had one of those. I had at age 40, I was trying to serve in a congregation and having that sense of desire to have a congregation that wasn't as vibrant as I'd like it to take it to the next level. So I got enrolled into a business program to help me be a better leader. And that's sort of where I had a soul searching opportunity to sort of answer that question about why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
And I alluded to an answer to that, which is to help people find direction and figure things out. I could go back to the time when my wife and I had a child, our second child, with Down syndrome. Weren't expecting that, kind of a ton of bricks kind of feeling and an experience that took us by surprise, but has turned out to be one of the largest blessings in our life, with a wonderful human being that we get to walk the path of life with, who cares about very good, wholesome, family related, church related, next thing on the schedule that she gets to celebrate kind of things. And the community of people that we got inspired into or sprung into there are some of the best people who go the extra mile for their loved ones who have special needs. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that has woken me up to a new level of people going the extra mile for each other. Um, so all of us have different events in our life that happen. Teresa and I had a house fire at one point, and that was very disruptive to our family. And being on the extreme receiving end of the kindnesses of other people, all of those things sort of shape a worldview or a realization, an awakening that I believe comes from the Lord, that we're supposed to be working with our best gifts and talents to help each other out. We all have something to offer. There are people in our lives who need us to step forward. And if we really just own that in our own personal way, whatever those stories are for ourselves, that's what we're talking about as this calling within a church frame for ways that we can step up and be a source of blessing to other people in our lives. So it's really part of a stream of my own life. I think the walk of life for a lot of people with their own examples of that has us reaching into our gifts and talents, hearing the voice of the Lord saying, what can you do for the people, for the world that needs you?
Thanks, Pete. I find that really deeply touching, so I'm really grateful for that. Oh, by the way, Todd Beiswinger types in that I should have no mercy with my questions. So I'll take that to heart, Todd. And while I say
What
that,
are
I just want
friends
to
for?
mention
Yeah.
anybody who's logged into YouTube has the opportunity to type in questions or comments, which we can refer to as we go through the broadcast. So please feel free to do that. I wanted to move on, just gradually get into this vision concept, and I want to get into like the specifics in a minute. But I wanted to ask, like, key to the core understanding of the theology of the new church is what we call the heavenly marriage. It's a marriage between love and wisdom, the relationship that good has to truth. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts about how that has informed your leadership and inspired you along the way.
Well, there's a teaching thing that many of us in the new church faith have is that the answer to everything is goodness and truth.
Absolutely.
And some of that's just sort of a funny answer for teenagers to offer whenever the question is, but it really is underlying a fundamental duality. I actually like to think about is a threesome. There's a love and wisdom or goodness and truth, but then there's what it does. It's the usefulness side of things. And if we have goodness, that's sort of a motivation that we receive from the Lord. And that is hopefully in an angelic sense, in the best of our character, is what I mean by that. We have this desire to be a source of blessing and help to other people. And in the new church faith, we have a rich array of ideas or truths that bring vehicles for that love to be expressed. And so we have all those tools. We have the love in our hearts, we have the ideas from the Lord's word in our heads, and therefore the responsibility, the calling is to put those into use, to see how we can manifest love in the lives of other people in wise ways. So that's that marriage of love and wisdom as I understand it, with its output, which is useful service. My favorite scripture is in Genesis chapter 12, and it's the second verse, and it's the call of Abram, and it's talking about the Lord raining blessings on Abram in a covenant that he was making with him. But the phrase, and you shall be a blessing, is what's stated there. And I believe that that's a command from the Lord, that if we are using those gifts of wisdom and love that he's given us, the minds and hearts that we have and the capabilities, it's supposed to manifest in ministry, in service to other people, in being a source of blessing, using our time and energy and compassion and creativity to figure out what we can do for other people. So I hope that speaks to this marriage of love and wisdom and its output, which is
Yeah,
usefulness.
I find it very much so. Speaking to it, I think of, yes, words like compassion, love, but love informed by truth and wisdom and giving forth mercy. It's hard to imagine being a blessing if you're a jerk, if you know what I mean. So just thinking about that. So you're thinking about use, and that to me kind of leads to my next question, which is, well, tell us about this new iteration of a vision. And I know you're not trying to speak ex cathedra or anything. What you're saying is your thoughtful understanding of where we might go in the future. It's not the Lord speaking through, well, I mean, hopefully the Lord is speaking at least somewhat through you, but you are not speaking for the Lord, if you know what I mean. And we don't buy into that kind of stuff. We're not vicars of Christ, as it were, in the new church. But still, you have to kind of point, where do we want to go? Let's be rational about it. And what are some of your thoughts about that a little more specifically?
Well, I'm a firm believer in a faith-based perspective that there is a Word of God, and that is a source and foundation of all the wisdom that our Creator wants to share with us. And if we're paying attention to that if we're deeply studying it, which is the profession that I've chosen, and leaning on the shoulders of a lot of other scholars in the church who are students of this body of knowledge that the Lord's given us, there are some themes that just bubble up. So the one that I've been reflecting on a great deal in the last probably more than a year, and it's not unique to the new church, is the call of Isaiah. So there's the voice of the Lord that he hears, this person whose name is Isaiah, recorded because of his responsiveness in what we call the Bible. And he is hearing this voice saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And his immediate responsiveness is, "Here I am, send me." And if we wanted to say that there's something that captures sort of the pivot point of our relationship with our Creator, I think this is it. There may be other ways of describing it. I just talked about Abram's being a blessing, that command there, but this is another one, send me. And so there's this whole construct of being willing to listen to that voice saying, what are the needs that have our name on it? How are we actually paying attention to our Creator who's constantly reaching out to us and giving us those opportunities to serve? And how can we orient ourselves towards that with an affirmative, holistically open attitude saying, yeah, I'll do that. That one has my name on it. I'm going to step forward. That's something that I can do. And there's so much joy that comes in that. In fact, we read in some of the teachings given for the new church that the people who live in heaven, nothing gives them more joy than being able to help others, to have impact, and to be a source of blessing to others in their life, to make a difference. And so many of us are looking for that. I think that there's a great thirst for that and an inherent sort of understanding that from that comes deep human satisfaction. So I love that idea, and that's sort of the springboard for it, is this willingness within a decidedly new church frame to understand what that call is in our lives and to respond, to openly and holistically say, all right, I'll do that. I hear the Lord putting that opportunity before me.
Yeah, that's very similar to the story of Samuel and Eli as well. Samuel getting sent out, which I have to say, I was reflecting on that story in the mountains of Wyoming in the middle of the night, and I was up at about 11,000 feet above the tree line, sleeping out under the stars. And it's like the Lord struck me in the heart. You could do that. And that is a pivotal moment in my life that caused me to be here doing this kind of stuff today. So I love the alignment of that. It's amazing.
I just had the opportunity to preach on that a couple of weeks ago in our cathedral, and so I 100% agree with that. It was really the facet of how are we listening for that voice, and just the fact that the Lord knows us by name. He understands our capabilities. He's speaking to us directly, saying, I've got a plan for you.
So to move this on into the New Testament, Jesus had some messaging around being sent, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You want me to speak about this? That's another one of my new favorite.
I'm inviting you to speak about it, yeah.
So people who know me know I have a fascination with the biblical number of 7. So here's a derivative of it, 70. And if you think about that, here I am, send me. Basically, the framework of the whole of the Old and New Testament scriptures is about people who were responsive. And this is an example of it. The Lord called 70 people. I like to think of them as men and women, old and young. Most of the people he was ministering to were of Jewish descent, but he had other people in that cosmopolitan area that he was speaking to. And 70 of them responded to his call to go out to some of the cities where he himself was about to travel. And they had that immediate responsiveness that we've been talking about. So there it is. There's people who are willing to go out at the Lord's bidding and do specific work. They were asked to bring peace to that house, which I think is a calling for all of us. How can we be peacemakers, make people's lives less stressful, be a source of comfort to them? They were to talk about the kingdom, about Jesus himself, about what that kingdom is like, which I sort of think about in very broad terms as things that have worked, that we know from the Lord, that bring a blessing or that bring order and structure and actually make our lives functional and give us the deep relationships that we want or the spiritual growth. And the final thing was to heal. And most of us might not think of ourselves as capable of healing, but if we are listening for the needs of other people, if we are showing up for them in ways that they're struggling, then through the Lord we can be a source of healing. And my favorite part of that story of sending out the 70 is it says that they returned with joy, saying, even demons are cast out in your name. There's an inherent reward that comes from doing the Lord's bidding. 70 is another number of giving your whole self to it. So that's another angle to this. But it's a rich story about being sent, which is a theme that just pops up all over the place in Scripture.
Thanks. I find this really interesting. I'm a kind of person who likes to think a lot about visions, and I wanted to just note something that has struck me over this last 11 months as we've been engaged in this conversation, where when I've looked at a lot of organizations, they will come up with a vision, and it's like, this vision, we are kind of tearing down everything that has existed in the organization before, and we're going to replace it with this vision. Now it's going to be this. And it's a very top-down driven kind of process, and I would say it lacks integrity. Integrity from the meaning of connection with what was going on before. And in a church, I could think, well, that is just kind of crazy. And I've seen churches tear themselves apart by shifting from one vision where they're defining their spiritual reality in a completely different way than they did before. And what do? Well, they wind up losing everybody and kind of starting from scratch. Well, I'm not getting this at all from the vision conversations that we've had in the Episcopal office, and I'm grateful for that, I should say. But I would like you to comment a little bit on how individual oriented this vision is. So I think when you're sending out the 70, we call it sending out the 70, but each one of those 70 people was saying, oh, he's sending me out. And I think that is a little bit of the focus that I've picked up over the last conversations that we've had together. Do you want to comment a little on that?
Sure. There's a lot there. I think that sort of a vision process, if it's actually going to work, if it's going to resonate with people in a group, it has to be authentic, meaning it has to resonate with people of like, that's us, or we have that capability, or that's the kind of work that I signed up for, or the kind of church that I signed up for. So I think that there's a discovery process in that. And part of that is really deeply reflecting on the strengths of this group of people within this church organization that we have. And give the glory to the Lord. He's brought some amazing people together in this small worldwide church who have individual capabilities. If we think about sort of that Isaiah moment that I was referring to, or one of those 70s you just mentioned, if we think about that on an individual level, we can see all those people that the Lord has led here and their particular capabilities, which might dovetail with other people's in a way that contributes to the whole. They're needed in a part of an engine that is a church, which can offer more than any one person can. And so if we think about pastors, for example, our biggest group of people that work for the church are pastors and teachers in schools. And both of those people have a scope of sort of relationships that they are able to minister to or to help or to be engaged with. And each of them has their unique strengths. So if they are in that Isaiah moment, then they're going to be hearing the Lord talking to them about using those unique strengths in their way. But that means that, say, a pastor in the New Church of Boulder Valley versus a pastor in the New Church of Westville in Durban, South Africa, are going to do it differently. They might have some overlap because they're coming from the same basic teachings and they've got some of them the same training, but there's a different group of people and a different sort of passion around it. So some might say, well, I'm going to really lean into trying to get people to see some of the power and beauty of these teachings that we have, which we refer to as the revelation of the Lord's second coming, a big concept right there. But this treasure trove of ideas that are inherently attractive about life after death and things, I want to get more people to understand those. And other people might say, well, actually, what I really want to do is get people focused on serving, using their gifts and talents. And both are perfectly legitimate extensions of this vision. In fact, I think that that's the way heaven, as the Lord describes it, is built. It's built one person at a time, each of them doing their own way of serving that sort of gathers together into a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. It's actually given a form of the universal human, which is reflective of the Lord himself, each of us doing our different part that not everyone else does. And when we see the whole, it's a beautiful thing. There's lots of different things that happen. So if we look at that across the church, there's people who will show up around this theme in different ways. And I want nothing more than to celebrate that, to embrace that, because it's a similar theme, but it's uniquely expressed.
So inherent in Christianity and new Christianity is change. That you get involved in religion, you get to know who the Lord is, and the Lord hopefully is working with your soul, and you are changing over the course of your life. So talking about a new vision would be a new chapter of vitality in the church. And if you think about various people, maybe one person is a fully engaged pastor who's working very hard in his congregation trying to serve the people around him. Another person might be the congregant who is volunteering to clean the bathrooms in the church. And the question I would have is, what's the delta for that person with this new vision? What's the change that you're trying to wrap your head around and trying to encourage people to see and reach for? It's a little bit different than what they've been doing already.
My mind wants to answer that in two ways. One is if it's a change in perspective, like what you're doing matters. If it's janitorial, there's a great use in providing a clean and safe space for others to utilize for whatever the purposes of that building, call it a church. And if that person knows that they're valued and needed and are responding to a call from the Lord to do that honestly, justly, and faithfully, then there's an ennobling of that use. It's not just a paycheck or something that they might cut corners on or something like that. And each of us in whatever profession or series of responsibilities we have can have that change of heart to look at it with those service eyes, with this way of saying, hey, I'm being a constructive fulfiller of a need that somebody has, whatever it is, if it's a teacher or a pastor or, as you say, janitor or parking cars in the parking lot, whatever it is. So I think that there's that. So, maybe there's an honestly, justly, and faithfully, which is referencing a teaching or a calling for us in our professional realms to do our work with those parameters. There's a calling there from the Lord. And if we have any kind of progression in our usefulness, sort of that next level, it could be professional development, or it could be applying for a broader scope of responsibility in the organization or something like that, so that we can do more, so that we can manifest some strengths that the Lord sees in us in a new way. So that's caused change. And I think it allows us to see ourselves the way our Creator does, as incredibly gifted people with unlimited potential to serve. I think some of that, and this is where I love the challenging parts of a church and the teachings of the new church, is sometimes we've got to repent. We've got to get rid of some of the stuff, the junk in our lives that's standing in the way. So, if we're thinking about showing up for the people in our lives who might need us as a good father or a loving husband, I'm talking about myself here. Uh, some of that is, well, I need to stop doing the things that actually undermine those relationships. And some of those things might be the calling of the Lord to the next thing that I need to do. Here I am, send me on this change journey to really, with the Lord's help, get rid of some of the stuff that's standing in the way. So I think that whatever it is, if it's people finding their value in the opportunities for service that they have, trying to reach for the next level or find a perspective that's doing it in a way that's serving and happy to do so, deriving some joy from that, or saying, all right, I need to actually change. I need to get into the growth part of faith with repentance and turning to the Lord to step up in that way. There's a rich conversation there that I think all of us can say, all right, I get that. That's there too, which opens up to the next level of our usefulness too.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. You might find somebody on a career path, and maybe they're connected with the church remotely, but just the fact that they take the time to ask the question, Lord, where are you sending me? Where do you want me to go? And maybe that's sort of continuing that career path that they've cultivated. Maybe there's some slight change in it, but the fact that they're asking the Lord and listening for an answer, well, that's in itself a big change, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I've been thinking about this story, but the one that pops into my mind is the visitation to Mary in the
Mm.
Christmas story. And if you just put yourself in that frame, here's this young woman, not yet married, wasn't really thinking that an angel would come and visit her, and uh, saying this amazing thing was going to happen in her life, that she would be the mother of the Messiah. So, there's just an amazing story there that we have an opportunity to personalize or just think about the human being and her willingness, captured in those famous words, behold the maidservant of the Lord, let it be to me according to your word, I think speak volumes to, we don't actually know sometimes what the Lord's going to ask us to do. If it's a new chapter that we would never have thought was what he was leading us to, are we open to that? And maybe over the course of our lives, we can think about the place that we are right now. And if we were a 20-year younger version of ourselves, would that be where we are? Have we been open to the voice of the Lord, looking at opportunities and saying, all right, if this is what you want me to do? And can we remain open to that, a little flexible, even if it's change? We were just talking about that, maybe a career change or a new chapter, like I described with a child with special needs, or now an adult with special needs. All right, wasn't planning on that, but here we go, and there's joy in it.
Yeah, I think a notion we often forget is, well, how much control do we actually have over our lives? we we have an as of self. We try to make decisions, but things often turn out completely differently than what we expect, and that's just a part of life. And sometimes that involves great suffering. Sometimes it involves blessing and joy, but it does bring up the thought, yeah, the Lord actually really is in charge. I would like to invite us to go to my slide with your vision statement on it so that you could say a little bit about that. Pull that up here.
All right. So there's the send me. We've talked about that. That's the Isaiah story. And it's this willingness that we're talking about, which is baked into that title there. And it's 7 years. And why 7 years? It's more of a figurative time than a literal time, but let's think about it as 7 years. What would the Lord be able to do if we were having a shared conversation, if as a church we were trying to collectively listen for the voice of the Lord and see about how we can equip and inspire people to show up in a different way in their lives? So within 7 years, thousands of people will come to love and treasure the revelation of the Lord's second coming. What's mentioned there is these teachings that we believe have been given by the Lord through Emanuel Swedenborg, which are a fulfillment of him saying when he was on earth, I have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. However, when he, the Spirit of truth, has come, he will lead you to all truth. And it's a premise that many people in the new church faith have found to be true for themselves, that they hear the Lord's voice fulfilling that prophecy in the teachings given through Emanuel Swedenborg. And we talk about that as the revelation of the Lord's second coming. Well, what's in there? There are some amazing teachings about life after death in a book called Heaven and Hell. There's some amazing teachings about what the sort of high bar or beautiful vision of marriages between one man and one woman called conjugal love, a special name in our church. And there's some amazing things in there about the Lord's providence and his providential care and the laws of providence that he articulates there that are the ways that he leads us, for example, in our freedom and rationality. There's some books in there that help us to understand the symbolic biblical meaning, the meaning of the biblical stories. So what I'm trying to say there is there's some things that people have discovered in those works that are just beautiful to them. One of the ones that I've been reflecting on is a concept that you were born to become an angel. Many people have this concept of angels. They're people who are good, who serve as guardians, who have sort of the best of humanity in their construct and are willing to be there for other people. Well, an angel in the new church frame, as you know well, are people like you and me who followed the Lord in their life and went to heaven. So that concept is very attractive to people. It's become sort of a backdrop in their minds of, oh yeah, I'm an angel in training. The Lord sees me as a potential angel in his kingdom of heaven one day. And that's something that I love and treasure, and I'm willing to sort of build as a foundation in my faith journey. There are thousands of those ideas there. And I'm just saying that if we're doing our work well, more people will come in touch with those and they will just say, wow, I've been looking for that idea all my life. And here it is. There's an amazing amount of teachings there. But the more time we spend with that revelation and sort of in the context of the new church faith, there's always that call to put it into practice somehow. It's an active life. Salvation is a process of using the gifts and talents with the Lord's help to be a source of blessing to other people. So it's not just loving teachings and delighting in the ideas. It's hearing the voice of the Lord saying, oh, and this is what I want you to do. So in an organizational sense, if we as a church, if we saw our role as a church in saying our biggest gift that we have to offer is this revelation, this collection of wisdom from the Lord that can transform lives in amazing ways. And we're trying to make people excited about those teachings. And our whole energy is trying to help people feel inspired to go up the mountain and hear the voice of the Lord with worship and reading of the Lord's word and just that spiritual community that does that, and come back down that mountain after that concept of speaking with the Lord or listening to his voice in our conscience or in the quiet of our mind, and we're willing to act. We're willing to say, all right, I'm going to go do this for the Lord. I'm going to go live the best way I can. If we
All right.
saw that as our job, we're going to be a vibrant church that's helping people.
That's wonderful. And so we have a comment or question that showed up on our chat on YouTube, and the question from Dr. Shea is, well, how do we promote that? How is the best way for people to follow the call and reach across the new church? There's power in numbers. I think that's a great question, and it does speak to this slide very well, because you're talking about, well, these are the people who go up the mountain have the message. So they get a message, they go up the mountain, they get into a relationship with the Lord, or they become eventually those angels that you're talking about. But how do we get this message out? And what's the role that the general church and the people in the church can play in that?
So sharing gifts. I mean, there's the phrase from the New Testament, "Come and see," which is one of the disciples was saying that, and it's just the sense of there's something precious here, and we're not just sort of keeping it to ourselves. So if people are lit up by something, if they really are finding value in something, say it's a school, they love their school, they're going to tell people about it. And that's sort of that, it's the role of the prophet Isaiah, but it's also the sending out of the 70. It's so much of that is, can we just share a little bit about this resource that the Lord's given, this church, this set of teachings? If it has value in your life, then of course it could have some on the value on for the people in your scope of influence. And so just share. And it could be as simple as, oh, I'm going to try and be a little bit more attuned to the Lord's voice and a little bit more ready to say, here I am. I learned that at my church. I heard a sermon about it, and I'm going to try and focus on that. And if you're doing that with some other people, then they have a chance to try that on for size. But so much of that is, I think that the Lord multiplies our efforts much more than we often give credence to. So, many people have had this sense about doing a podcast or having a chance to write an article for a magazine or some publication or something, and it's a permanent resource out there, and that's discoverable on a YouTube or somewhere else. And years later, somebody's picking that up. And it's something that you did a long time ago that's now at the hands of the Lord helping somebody. So I see so many people experimenting with some of the tools that we've been given, streaming their worship services, doing podcasts like this one. And if we get into sort of a ministry frame and we see ourselves as a teaching organization that's trying to equip people to be the best way of serve in the best ways that they can, and we're churning out people who feel a little bit more inspired and equipped to do that, you can see at the hands of the Lord some of that multiplication effect that could happen. And we should give glory to the Lord for that. But I believe that if we cooperate, He does wonders, even with a small little organization like ours. So the more merrier in that sense, is if we can have more soldiers in that field, more laborers in the vineyard, there's going to be more that He can do. But I just want us to try. And the more we put out there, the more the Lord can reach people.
I think some of the most compelling messages are the messages of just the people who in everyday ways are touched by the Lord to maybe reach out and do something different because of their interaction in prayer with the Lord, or they hear something in church. Maybe it's not a message even that the preacher had given, but they hear something and they act on it, and then we're able to hear those stories. Those are often the most compelling stories, or how the Lord has sustained somebody maybe in a state of illness, or caused them to reach out and minister to others who are ill. Just as everyday, I think of them as small miracles, but they're small miracles that the Lord has caused somebody to do something that they wouldn't have done on their own, and you can see, surely the Lord is in this place, because it was some little meaningful, holy act that helped change and helped bring a little bit of the Lord's love into the world. And that to me speaks a little bit about our messy world. We live in an incredibly messy culture today. There's a lot of conflict. That's a global culture. It's everywhere. And I get to travel all around the world, as you do, Pete, and we see a lot of just vast dysfunction that I think is just generated because people don't have spirituality. And I'm wondering how this vision might apply and just to help the world. What are your thoughts about that?
Wow. So I think most of us are looking for some sense of purpose, some sense of meaning in our life. And when I talk to a lot of my pastor colleagues, or just look around that world that we get to travel around, there's a lot of people that are wandering, that are aimless, that don't have that sense more than just showing up at what they're supposed to do, and getting into some rocky parts of life. So if we put it again at a biblical frame, that sending out of the 70 that I referenced, there's another version of it, which is sending out the 12. And in that version that's in the Gospel of Matthew, it says that Jesus looked at the multitudes and had compassion on them because they were weary and scattered like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said, pray, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray the Lord to send out laborers into his harvest. So there's so much baked into that. That's just beautiful. But I think there's truth about that fact that many of us, all of us, go through periods of life where we're wandering, a little bit lost, scattered, maybe lonely, feeling broken in some ways. And what's going to lift us out of that? I think that there's the number one thing is the Lord, our God. He's the only one who can really reach down and lovingly, with an intimate knowledge of everything there, help us to find our next path out of that to brighter day, to a next chapter. But he works through us. He helps us with that sense of a calling. And if people just saw themselves the way the Lord sees them, with all the potential, with that, I have a job for you, are one of the laborers in my vineyard. You're not one of those scattered sheep. I need you to be one of those people that's going to go out and help those scattered people. And in that very act of trying to do that, even though we might feel very flawed, there's healing, there's purpose, there's a sense of inherent joy in being a source of blessing to somebody else. So even though we are going to have that sense of brokenness, I mean, there's so much divisiveness in the world. There's so many people who feel like they are lashing out at others just because they're in pain themselves, and don't really know the Lord's order that really brings the kind of joy and health and relationships that we want. And we know that. So what's going to change? I think it's this sense of see ourselves the way the Lord does. And if we're answering that call, if we're laborers in his vineyard, again, broken though we may feel at times, there's going to be healing. Healing for us and then through us to other people. It's a ministry kind of way that I think is quintessential, a way that we're called to be angelic to other people, laborers in the Lord's vineyard. So I don't know, there's something that really speaks to me about that. The world
So,
needs this kind of healing for
oh,
sure.
well, so related to that, maybe it's a little oblique, but it seems like a call story to me. A man had 100 sheep, and one of the sheep was lost. And so, what did that person do? He left the 99 and he went and he found the little lost lamb and he took it on his shoulders and rejoiced. And I wonder if there's something embedded in your articulation for vision that captures some of that sentiment in that story and the call for the church to reach out and love lost people.
Mm. There's a beautiful teaching that comes to my mind that uh, all people are destined by the Lord for heaven, intended by the Lord to go to heaven. So there's never a person that is created in this world that the Lord says, oops, that person's not going to be one of my sheep, not one of the people that has the potential to have a beautiful part in his kingdom. Some people, with their freedom, row against the stream of providence and find themselves in a dark place, which much more self-oriented and worldly, and taking rather than giving. But the Lord never gives up on even those people. And life is long. We sometimes think about it as patterns that you can sort of see in a person that don't change. But I believe that the Lord's at work in every single person's life. And sometimes they just need somebody to believe in them, to see some spark of goodness in them, even if they're in a dark sort of a place where they've made a mess of a lot of the things that they hold dear, and it doesn't seem like there's much hope. Well, the Lord sees hope, and there's always a way forward. I love that story. You mentioned the lost sheep. It's a beautiful image of the Lord as the shepherd who cares for every single human being, even if there's a tiny bit of goodness. But the story of the Red Sea, there is always a way forward, even when it seems hopeless. You know, there's the sea parting and we go through on dry land. That's the power of the Lord. So, sure, when we think about a church, sometimes people like to think about it as the tribe of the faithful, the people who are doing good. And certainly we want to celebrate that. But most of us know that we've got a lot of work to do between us and where we are right now and uh, meeting our time when we cross over into the next life. And if we're aware of our own flaws and really honestly being aware that we're can be rotten people sometimes and need the Lord's mercy, we are that lost sheep, then maybe we can have a little bit of those heavenly eyes at the people who are struggling. I'm amazed at some of the people who have a consistent energy to go and minister to people who are in really dark places in life. That's a hard thing to do. But sometimes they hear the voice of the Lord saying, "This is what I want you to do." And they say, "Here I am, send me." So I would love to have us be a lot more willing to work with people in their varied states. I think that there's a balance of clarity of what we stand for and what we're trying to offer. Not that everything is okay in people's lives if it's destructive, but we're all works in progress. And there's a huge merciful attitude there that I think is heavenly. It's what the way the Lord wants us to see each other.
Yeah, I have a really precious comment that I see that came up from Kathy, and she writes, each of us knows a number of people and connects with them and can share even small insights that plant seeds. We don't have to do big things, but small things regularly with love. Any response to that?
That sounds like a Mother Teresa kind of quote in essence. I love that concept. There's a phrase that I've been working on in this vision work, in this sort of shared conversation, and it's live your faith in ways that bring blessing. And an earlier version of that that seems relevant here is ordinary people living their faith in simple ways that bring blessing. It could be offering a smile. It could be a phone call. It could be a small visit with somebody. So I think that that's what that Kathy is talking about. Is it doesn't have to be big. So a lot of the things about here I am, send me might be our life's purpose, sort of the big discovery of why we were put on this earth. But I think that she's absolutely right that it could be a simple, hey, I did the laundry today for my kids and they got to have some clean clothes when they're ready to go to school. Not that exciting, but can we again see it in a sense of, all right, here I am, I'll do that. Simple ways that bring blessing. I love that.
That's great. Thank you. I was wondering if you think forward, say, well, I could say 7 years, but you kind of said it a little bit in your slide. So I'm going to say 10 years. What would you say is the most tangible evidence of your new vision coming to life?
You mentioned a little while ago stories, and there's a part of me that wants to spend a good chunk of my time just listening to people's stories. I think that if we could just all catalog the people that we know and the amazing things that they've done in their lives, uh, and just sort of take stock of that, many of those examples would be ones that we could say, oh, well, I could do that. It's not something that's that mysterious. Or if it's just an appreciation for somebody doing something that we're not gifted in and complement something that we are gifted in, that's another layer of it. So, in terms of that 10 years down the road, um, I'm a people person. I love people's stories. So I hope to have hundreds of these personal interactions with people who maybe I know right now, or hopefully a lot of people I don't know who have a story to tell about the ways that they have been gifted by the Lord with an ability to serve that's made a difference and a hope, a way in which they want to serve the Lord in their next chapter. And they're turning to this church, at least some of them, to find support and energy around that. And if we've got tools and programs, maybe courses and things like that, that equip them to do that, those stories are just going to be readily available. And hopefully that will be an inspiration to other people saying, oh, I could do that. Or this is a place that really does feed people's desire to be a source of blessing or an angelic presence in other people's lives. So I don't know what that's going to look like organizationally. I come from a framework of congregations, and I love that spiritual community where there's old and young, worshiping together, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all those kinds of things, baptisms, weddings, even funerals. Those kinds of things are very familiar to me. But if it's an educational outreach kind of thing, if it's online, a lot of times where people are finding connection and the stories are bubbling up in those ways, that's a discovery process. So I don't really know what the organization is going to look like 10 years from now, but I can pretty much guess that they're going to be incredible people with incredible stories. And if we're looking at that, that's a beautiful thing, and that's vibrancy. That's success to me in the best sense of that word. If people's lives are touched in a way that they feel hope and purpose, and they have a story to tell about the ways that the Lord is using their talents and abilities, um, wouldn't that be magic? And
Yeah,
again, give the glory to the Lord.
My way of putting it would be you walk into a new church community and you say, oh, this is a group of people. They are on a journey of joining love and wisdom. I can see that love and wisdom operating hand in hand. That's how I would put it. That's sort of my shorthand. So we're at the top of the hour, and I'd like to give you a parting question, if I may, and that would be, well, if you were leaving for a far-off land, I said that rather than if you were about to get hit by a bus, but if you were leaving for a far-off land, what advice would you give to your successors and to the church that you were leaving behind?
The successors in the church. So we're talking a little bit organizationally.
Oh, you can
I would
answer it
say,
any way you want.
yeah. So I would say that this church has been blessed with gifts. It's got this amazing revelation. It's got a heritage of people that have stepped forward in remarkable ways. And if if there's a calling in the frame of their leadership to step forward and take on that responsibility of leading or providing some of those services in an ongoing way, there's nothing probably that's going to be more rewarding to a person who's got that leadership gift set in a priestly or a organizational church leader kind of way. I would say that that's going to be a source of blessing in that person's life. So lean into the heritage, into the teachings, into the amazing array of people that the Lord leads to this spiritual engine, and answer his call. Listen for it and answer the call, and this future will be bright. And I think that that scales on a personal level and on an organizational level. So keep listening and keep saying, "Here I am, send me." The future will be bright.
Well, Pete, I want to thank you for the time. It's been fascinating and uplifting. I want to just say it's a remarkable pleasure to be, and a privilege to be able to serve with you and serve a church that is filled with so many just incredible people with so many different types of wisdom. I'm blessed by it every day. So thank you very much for being willing to take an hour with us. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.